just needed a slightly different from what they are. We talk, you see, things are not normal.
Welcome to Strange Familiars. I'm your host, Timothy. I'm here with my co-host, Allison. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I got the official title.
Of co-host?
Yeah.
I think you've had that title for some time. If you have a story you want to share with us, you can email us strangefamiliarspodcast@gmail.com. Right now, we're pretty booked up for interviews. I think most of March is booked at this point.
You're at 2027, right?
No, thankfully not. But as I always say, if you have a Bigfoot story, especially a Bigfoot story with high strangeness, I definitely want to get that, and I will make extra time to do your interview. Just a reminder to everyone that Where the Footprints End, High Strangeness and the Bigfoot Phenomenon, Volume 2, is now out. It's available on Amazon. You can pre-order copies from us if you want them signed by me. As I said before, Josh lives in Georgia, I live in Pennsylvania, so unfortunately copies signed by both of us are a little hard to come by at this time. You can pre-order it from us at our Etsy shop named Lost Grave. I'm hoping to have copies within the next week or two. Whenever they arrive, I'll start sending them out. If you were waiting for the ebook, the Kindle edition is now available on Amazon for people who prefer the ebooks. You don't get all of my beautiful chapter mastheads and spot illustrations that I do with that, but you do get all the information.
You get convenience and minimalism.
And speaking of ebooks, my last book previous to Where the Footprints End, Don't Look Behind You, never had an ebook because I don't know how to make them myself. However, with the help of Mike Cleland,
And the owls.
and I'm sure the owls helped. Mike helped me get an ebook for Don't Look Behind You. So finally, there's a Kindle edition of Don't Look Behind You for people who've been waiting for that. Like I said, the Kindle edition of Where the Footprints End, Volume 2, is available as well on Amazon. Hard copies are available from us at our Etsy shop. Like I said, shop name Lost Grave. If books are sold out there, any of my books, it's just a matter of me doing a quick reorder. So come back and look, in a day or so, and there should be more in the Etsy shop. I'm afraid to put a limitless stock there in case things get out of hand. But if, usually the stock will dwindle and I won't see that it's sold out for a day or two. But Where the Footprints End Volume 2 was sold out for about a day, I didn't notice. And then I went back and added more copies. Tonight, we will be talking with Jenna, who has some really interesting stories. A lot of synchronicities. This strange figure in a colorful cloak she saw in the middle of a blizzard up in the mountains, I think, of Colorado, way away from anywhere, who may or may not have shapeshifted into a tree. She's also got stories of mystery lights and more. So without further ado, let's hear from Jenna. Okay, tonight we're talking with Jenna, who's got several stories to share with us, beginning with your childhood, I believe, right?
Yeah, I kind of have always kind of just experienced things. I don't really know. Sometimes I never really knew that it was like unusual, or sometimes I kind of feel like I knew it was unusual, but I just like, a lot of my childhood I've been pretty solitary. Mm-hmm. I never really had many friends, and I grew up kind of rural, and I don't know. So there's not really many people to talk to about it except for like my immediate family, and they're a bunch of oddballs too. So
did you know these things were weird, or did you just think everybody experienced this kind of stuff?
I knew it was weird because it kind of seemed to focus on me more so. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I was kind of more like mutually confused or aggressive towards it. Like I didn't accept it. Like I don't know. It just seemed to kind of focus on me. And I think that's maybe because I did the same. I don't know if that makes sense.
You mean you focused on it? Like you paid attention to it, so it paid it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. But then, like, everybody in my family when I was growing up, like, everybody's got some stories or experiences that come out. Like, it doesn't take a lot of talking about it before they're like, oh, yeah, I had that happen, or I had this happen, or so it comes up easily in conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the polarity between my mother's family and my dad's family is like kind of, they're very opposite. I'm surprised that we were even born, honestly. I don't know exactly how that worked out, but very like the duality there. But both sides have like their own form of experiences. Yeah, so it's hard for me to really know where to start, I guess. I would say that I, could start with the fact that like my childhood home, which is in Colorado, it's Loveland, Colorado. That's when I first really kind of started like experiencing strange things, I guess, from a very young age. And like, there's memories, like from my mom, this is from my parents that I don't quite remember, but I used to be really freaked out of like if we were driving and we ended up being somewhere at night, let's say, like we went to the grocery store and then it got dark out. And if we were driving home, I would have to be like hidden underneath a blanket or something because I would be freaking out about the trees, like driving up our driveway. Supposedly I would talk about all these things in the trees or these little creatures or something in the trees that were like kind of just always staring at me.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to draw little pictures of it. Like I have, my mom showed me an illustration. I kind of want to get it from her, but when I was really young, she asked me to draw all the things that I saw. And I don't even remember doing this, but she showed me this picture like maybe 2 years ago. And I was like, that's weird. That's kind of creepy that I'm like a 5-year-old or maybe like 7-8-year-old drawing these things.
Wow.
Yeah, it also kind of extended to like my brother and my sister. It's weird to me because I'm the youngest of 3 children. So when I was always kind of in a way kind of protected by my sister. But my brother also, at this point, I think he turned something off at some point. Now he doesn't dream at all. Compared to me, I dream very vividly. That's one thing I kind of want to talk about is like kind of the dream worlds that I experience. But my brother, when he was younger at this same house, like he would always be freaking out at night. Like he could barely sleep at night. He would have night terrors. And he would see literally like a barn owl or some kind of an owl outside of his window, like every night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and later on, like nowadays, I kind of have heard about that being a thing.
Right.
Yeah. Like I've kind of like, they have it in some movies or this or that. And, when I see that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that freaks me out. Cause like my brother would see this owl every night outside his window and just like be screaming and crying and then have like really weird night terrors.
Wow.
Yeah. His night terrors, this is maybe an 8-year-old boy literally having dreams about like apocalyptic scenarios, talking about information that he probably shouldn't that he hasn't been exposed to. So kind of a weird thing, yeah. And then he just kind of went catatonic at some point and just stopped dreaming. So I'm not sure what that's about,
Mm-hmm.
but there's something there that I think, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, was it a willful thing? Like he decided that he was just no longer going to dream, or did it just sort of happen?
So honestly, my parents were concerned about him because he wasn't sleeping very well. And they ended up taking him to some kind of a hypnosis dream therapy place. I don't really remember what that was about, honestly. I'm 3 years younger than my brother, 2.5 years younger than my brother. So not saying I'm way younger, but I remember dropping him off and like picking him up, and I think it was called like Lighthouse or something, but they actually did some kind of like hypnosis on him.
Oh, wow.
And after that point, he stopped having dreams. So, and that's good, bad, any kind of dreams, nothing. He goes to sleep at night and nothing happens.
Huh. Ah, that's very interesting, though.
It's very weird. And I think maybe for him it was partially intentional because he was really afraid of it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's affecting you negatively, I guess dreamless sleep is better than disturbed sleep.
Yeah. I don't think I could turn my dreams off even if I wanted to, and I don't think I would, because I kind of rely on them, honestly. Sometimes they can be really scary, but if I didn't dream, I would feel kind of incomplete.
Yeah.
So, it is one of those things.
If you don't remember the things that you were seeing in the trees, can you describe at least the drawings that you saw, or do you remember, like, from being a small child, what they look like?
So what I do remember, I can talk about what I do remember, and I can also explain those drawings. But what I do remember is that from a very young age, when you start becoming like identified, like you start realizing that you are a person.
Sure, yeah.
I can remember just lots of things in my house. Like, I can remember characters that, like, my sister or my brother don't remember. I had imaginary friends when I was little that were so real, obviously so real to me, but I do remember physically seeing these things. I'll just say, like, my actual, like, imaginary friend. So I had named her Grenda, and I don't know where I got that name, but she was like an elemental. She would actually shapeshift when people were around.
Wow.
And like basically be like invisible or something. And I would have to explain to people like, oh, you can't see her right now because she doesn't, just because like for some reason, like she doesn't want you to see her.
Right.
But when I was alone, she would shapeshift, and she was almost like a dragon, I guess. Is from like a small dragon creature. And, I just like went through this whole phase where I would just be drawing dragons everywhere in different ways. I'm not really sure what that was about, and I do have a very strong imagination, but that's like one of the first characters. But, I went through a lot of kind of, it definitely, like, when I was raised, I would say I was more like left to my own devices than really most children I know.
Yeah.
We grew up on like a pretty rural area, like Colorado, and my dad's property is like 18 acres, mountain, and there's a ditch right below the house, and there's just like a lot of energy there between inside the house and outside the house. There were almost human-like spirits that I would encounter sometimes that would scare me. There was also a Native American man that I saw a couple of times on the actual mountain. I never saw him in the house. I just kind of would see glimpses of him like on the mountain. And I wasn't really very educated as far as like Native American tribes or what they look like. This was just, later on I kind of saw like a native person and was like, that's totally that dude. And my dad also saw this character, but he got a very, very negative feeling from this character. But I got a very positive feeling. Like, I did not feel threatened. I felt it was almost to me as if you saw like a really beautiful like wild animal. In a way, we're just like, oh my gosh, like that's whoa, and then it just passes,
And did you have the sense of this not being a quote unquote normal or person, that it was something other?
Oh, definitely other. So, like, when I experience things, there's a couple different ways in which I experience them. So, I've talked to people about this. So, like, I have, like a mind's eye, like, movies all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I close my eyes, I am always seeing images, always seeing little movies. Sometimes they're, like, out of place. Sometimes they're relevant, but just it's always going on. I'm just very used to it, and I think I just kind of am a visual person. But like that's one way that I would experience these characters and that character. So like if I'm looking at like out the back door up the mountain, I close my eyes, I see the same image that I would see as if my eyes were open, but there's like something in there that's not like in the waking world or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's another overlap, I guess, with like these other images in there. And it's like spot on. And sometimes it's almost like I'm not even closing my eyes. It almost feels like I have my eyes open. So that's like one thing, is these constant kind of like mind's eye images and like real storylines. Like I kind of went into a little exercise where I would just try to write it down, and it would be like just something casual, like an old man like grabbing a rake and like going out to his barn and like just raking stuff up. And I'm like, I don't know where that came from. Like, why would that happen? Just kind of almost like memories or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay, I guess I'll just kind of evolve a little bit. So, childhood home was weird. There was definitely haunting things that happened. I started noticing a trend of stuff when I was like more in my teenage years. I would say that's kind of more when things really like became very clear to me, and where my memory is really clear.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I have some childhood trauma too. So there's some other stuff going on that kind of like overlaps. So when I was like in my like young teenage years, I started developing kind of a weird type of seizure disorder. Mm-hmm. So I think that's honestly like it's still undiagnosed, and I went through medical treatment. My mom brought me to like a place to actually get medical treatment, and they did a lot of diagnostic work, but they never came up with anything conclusive. And honestly, these seizure episodes that I had are not classic seizures necessarily. One doctor even said like, oh, this is an anxiety thing. Like you're having anxiety attacks, which yes, there is definitely anxiety that goes along with it. But there's other things that go along with it, like auditory or visual, maybe hallucinations, kind of precognition stuff. Mm-hmm. Kind of like, it's like sometimes it starts out with just this incredible, overwhelming sense of like empathy, where you're just like hit with just almost like alien emotions. And I mean alien as far as like not your emotions, like from someone else or from somewhere else. So it's not like you can really identify why you're feeling that way. So these episodes really started happening before some kind of weird, maybe paranormal event would happen to me. And because of my upbringing is honestly kind of like, it's very Christian view. So there was kind of like a demonizing, I don't know how to, like a negative view of what I was experiencing.
Sure, yeah.
So if I talked to like my dad about it, it would be pretty, like he would say things that would really freak me out. They weren't comforting. It wasn't like, oh, like let's talk about this. It would be like, oh, you need to go like pray and repent or something. Like you gotta take care of your soul, proud.
Right.
So, I didn't really talk to people about it. But like an example, I guess, is like one time I was up in my room which is upstairs. And I have this thing where I'll wake up at like a very precise time at night. And this will happen for like a week straight or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll wake up at exactly 3:33 in the morning.
Right.
Like
yeah.
every night.
Mm-hmm.
So I wake up 3:33 in the morning. I get up out of bed. I walk into the hallway. I look down the hallway and I just see this black shape down there at the end of the hallway, you know, just this figure. The next thing I know, I'm in my room. I wake up on the floor and like everything in my room is completely like thrown about.
Oh, wow.
Like pictures are down, blankets off the bed. It's like I threw a big old tantrum in there and like just kind of threw everything around.
Mm-hmm.
And no one heard anything.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because I've heard that, you know, so many times. Right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's kind of like just this thing, you know. So nobody comes and checks on me. Like I just wake up in this like I remember seeing something that scared me, and the next thing I know, it's just like I'm in this chaos.
Right.
Almost. And I have no recollection of what happened. And part of me, I'm thinking, is this one of my seizure episodes, or is this like, what was that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I kind of just put it on the back burner or something. But I have like a little bit of a phase where what I was experiencing kind of went down this really dark road. And it was to the point, you know, in my teenage years that like, you know, I felt like I was very disturbed. Like I would try to like communicate to other kids and stuff, and they would like almost sense that in me. Like it wasn't from my sister kind of taking me under her wing. And so she lived primarily with my mom. My
mm-hmm.
parents were separated when I was younger. And I kind of floated in between my dad and my mom, but I wasn't really like captured by any of their orbits necessarily. I was kind of passed back and forth. But like my brother lived primarily with my dad. So there was this always kind of this dynamic where I didn't really belong anywhere. So my sister really kind of saved me in a lot of ways. And I started to kind of get more of a connection or friend group or whatever. So that was really helpful because it led me outside of my dad's house. And then I realized that a lot of these things that I experienced weren't really all that dark, and it was really just my dad's house that was kind of dark.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I kept experiencing things when I left there primarily, but they were different. They were just totally different. And some of them I would say is just like honestly magical, which makes me happy because I swing that side. I like magical world view
mm-hmm.
stuff. I'm totally about it.
Sure.
You know, so part of me realized that it's almost a sense of like you see what you're wanting to see or something. Like, you know, like I was told that it was dark, and so therefore I saw that. So when I left that environment, it kind of turned into like more of that elemental stuff, more of the just kind of like maybe it's not exactly defined necessarily. One thing that had happened is me and a couple of friends were camping, and we were really high up altitude wise, and we had hiked probably about 6 miles up from my friend's house. So their house butts like basically national park.
Mm-hmm.
So we had just like hiked up, and you can kind of go endless. Like there's no boundaries up there.
Right.
So we're way up there, and we are like hanging out and having a great time. 3 of my friends are way more athletic and very like rambunctious, so they go running off into the mountains. And then me and my other friend Malcolm are left, and we're just having a good time hanging out together. And we end up going on a hike, and out of nowhere, just whiteout blizzard, total whiteout blizzard. It was a little windy and stuff, but then all of a sudden the snow hit, and then the next thing you know, it's like 15 minutes later and you can't see anything.
Wow.
So we're just kind of like, not exactly freaking out, like trying to pretend that we're not concerned, but we didn't quite remember how to get back to camp. And we definitely had wandered pretty far away, but we couldn't see. So, we're just like, okay. So we're just trying to like figure out how to get back, but now it's starting to get kind of dark. Like it's definitely evening. If you hear something, it is my dog right now being really ridiculous.
That's
trying
fine.
to get me
We're a dog positive show. It's fine.
I'm like, okay, Aurora, this is really great time for you to come up with your really loud ball and freak out.
You can often hear our rabbit in the background of our episodes. So.
I'm like, I have animals. That's one thing I do have. I got 2 puppies and a kitty. But anyways, they are my world. So we're lost at this point, or at least we're concerned that we're lost at this point. And me and my friend Malcolm are hiking, and we both saw this at the same time. We were looking downward, it's not quite a cliff, but it's steep. It like one step under cliff. And we both see this man down below us with this incredibly elaborate, like, I would say like a shawl or some kind of like a cloak. It was just ornately designed, like colorful, like a tapestry. And he's staring at us. And we both saw this at the same time, and we're like, oh my gosh. And we start walking to him, and we saw him and recognized him both at the same time. But as we started walking down to him, it was actually like a tree, like a fallen log, like half dead tree down there. So this like man with his face in the shawl and everything, he just like shifted into this stump sticking out of the ground. And we both looked at each other like, okay, that was interesting. Cool, right on. But we're still kind of trying to find out where we are needing to go. So we had this kind of ridiculous call that we made to each other to like find each other in the woods. We'd go camping all the time, our friend group, and we'd be out there. And so we would like make, like a howl sound or like a caw or, a sound to find each other.
Sure.
And, so at that moment when we got down to the stump, we heard 3 howls from a direction that sounded like people. They sounded like our friends. So we were like, oh, good. Our friends are at camp. Let's go that way. Let's go find them. That's relieving. So we just kind of head that direction. And given I'm also barefoot because I'm basically always barefoot, but now it's like probably 5 inches of snow.
Wait. You're barefoot in the snow?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm always barefoot. This is the thing about me. I kind of am always barefoot. But at this moment, I was kind of regretting being barefoot. I was just trying to like push on through and be tough or something. But anyway, so we're hiking back, and I'm like, oh, I'm actually getting cold. The sun's starting to go down. Like, we got to get a campfire going. And we get to camp, and we were totally expecting our friends to be there, and they weren't. Camp was completely silent. Nobody was around. That was exactly where we heard these howling from. We looked around and we're like, okay. So I start getting all the firewood together and starting a fire. And then I start howling because I'm like, okay, guys, you got to get back to camp now. It's actually dark now.
Right.
And then you just hear this, like, our friends just like are like kind of like hysterically laughing / like, oh my gosh, holy shit. If you guys didn't like make us sound like we were lost, we had no flipping clue. So they heard me howl and lead them back to camp, which is so weird because something led us back to camp.
Yeah, I was good, and it wasn't
them.
It wasn't them.
It wasn't them. They came from a completely different direction, and they were actually in way worse condition than we were. We were only like maybe a mile away from camp, and they just like went off somewhere, and then, you know, were completely confused also when this random like whiteout blizzard hit. So, you know, they just kind of were like, oh, thanks for saving the day. I'm glad you guys were here the whole time.
Wow.
And we're like, actually, we were not here the whole time. Like, we literally just got back, and we thought that you had let us back. So, you know.
The cloaked man you saw, was there a point that he left your vision? And, you know, that, or were your eyes on him the whole time, and just when you got to it, it was just this tree stump or the log or whatever it was?
Okay, so the distance of this figure was like, he was far enough away, but close enough that you could be like, that is a man with a very colorful tapestry cloak on, down there looking at us. Like, you could tell that, but then at the same time, it was far enough away that you're like, what am I seeing exactly? So it's kind of like that weird border of vision where, you know, like, you could be like making it up in your head or just kind of seeing what you want to see. And if it wasn't validated by my friend Malcolm with me, I would have been like, oh, wow, that just kind of looked like a man, and I was making those patterns up in my head, you know?
Right.
But because we both looked at each other like, what is this man doing down there? We like had this moment where we recognized that we both saw this, but we didn't talk about it. We just decided simultaneously to walk that way. And as we walked that way, what I perceived is that gradually, as we walked that way, just completely shifted. Like, there was this moment where it was just, oh no, that's a tree log. Like, it was like a tree that was probably like 8 feet tall and then had broken off just like kind of like up on the trunk. And this area is like tree line. So tree line is kind of interesting because you'll just get this gradual, but then all of a sudden abrupt end to all the trees.
Yeah. As it goes up, you know, in altitude. Yeah. So there's like really tall, really gorgeous trees, and then like 60 feet away, they're all crazy and twisted, and like there's some really crazy looking ones. And then all of a sudden, there's no more trees. So we were right at that line. Now, do you feel like this figure could have been leading you, or, you know, trying to draw you back closer to your camp as well? And then when you got there, you know, the howls did the rest of the work?
Yeah, I definitely think that the whole thing was relevant, because this is like super like wintry conditions, and it was very windy. And so when we got to this tree, which was right at the reach of our vision, when we got to this tree, if we would have continued the other direction, I mean, it's very possible that kind of downgrade actually turned into a cliff, the direction we were going. Like, it's, you know, I feel like it kind of led us down the less steep of the area and then over to the right direction that we were trying to go. So I'm not sure, because I didn't see what was ahead of us, the direction that we were already going. Like, I didn't go that way, but it kind of led us down a channel in the rock to this tree. And then we followed like below it up back to our camp, but towards these howls. So who knows exactly? Right. But I do think it was intentional. And then for the howls themselves, like, I know what coyotes sound like. I know what wolves sound like. But these I could identify as voices, human voices trying to howl.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and when we got to camp, I was honestly so confused when we were walking up and not seeing them. Because in my mind, I was like, okay, they're there. But then when they met up with us, it was the same way. They're like, you know, they were like totally lost. And then when we howled, we actually led them back. So it was just kind of an interesting experience for sure. And it was something that like someone was there to validate it with me.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
kind of before that, I kind of experienced things very like on my own. And, I just kind of internalize it. I don't really talk about it, or at least I didn't used to.
Yeah, I mean, there's something very nice about having someone else there when you can say, do you see that weird light there? Okay, it's not just me. It's not just comforting in that someone else is there, but it's validating, like you said.
Yeah, because, I just have, like, especially at one point, I had kind of just been told that it's my imagination. So I'm just like, oh, that's my imagination once again. And I just kind of, like, compartmentalize it, put it somewhere.
Let's say you have a puppy.
Okay.
And the puppy is mouthing and biting, or it's not really grasping potty training, or maybe it has fear and nervousness, or
It's definitely my dog then.
it's barking too much. Maybe it's chewing on furniture or shoes or other things it shouldn't be chewing on. Maybe you need help with crate training. Maybe your puppy has hyperactivity issues. Maybe you need help with leash training your puppy. All of those things and more can be helped.
How many days would it take to accomplish that?
Approximately 90. And 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy is the place that can help you with that. You can find them at sithappens.us. Look for the 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy link at the top of the page. Their relationship-based approach to training helps you and your puppy become perfect for each other. It's not really about making a perfect puppy. It's about helping you and your puppy becoming perfect together. A
Like
perfect
any
team.
other relationship, you're not trying to change someone into what you want them to be.
Exactly. You're
Trying to
perfecting.
work on the give and take of a relationship.
Exactly. 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy has online sources like video lessons, a secret Facebook group, and of course they have one-on-one options available as well. Let 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy help you understand how your dog thinks, which is not how you think.
I feel like it would be the same though.
You and your puppy would think exactly
the same. We'd like the same TV shows. We'd like the same bands.
extended chess games.
I don't know how extended they'd be because we'd be equally matched.
Right, but that's what I mean.
Oh, it could go on forever because we'd play exactly the same.
Exactly. You can find 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy at sithappens.us. Look for the 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy link at the top of the page. So, I make no secret that I'm generally a believer, and I talk to people with crazy stories all the time, but I'm going to just, put on the skeptic hat here, which I always say doesn't fit me very well. And so someone who's listening and has heard you say, so I had these seizures and I would occasionally get, hallucinations with them. Maybe they're thinking, how do you know all of this, everything that you're talking about isn't, a form of hallucination then? What would you say to that?
I would say that whether or not it's a hallucination, it's real to me in some way, and it affects me in the way that I see the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of irrelevant whether other people think I'm hallucinating or not, but also it's been validated by other people in other ways.
Right.
So I'm not exactly sure. And yeah, I do have an active imagination. I mean, I'm also I spend most of my time really doing art. I love art. That's my thing. I love imagining. But these episodes or these things that I experience aren't that. They're not just me imagining how to draw a flower and remembering what one looks like and recreating it. It's I see something or hear something that it's almost invading me in a way. Sometimes it almost feels like it's invading. I mean, I'm really trying to keep my communication on a linear timeline, but it's kind of hard to in a way.
It is well, especially when talking about this stuff. I've written about this in books. How difficult it is to relate this stuff in a linear fashion, because one thing will happen and then something will happen 2 months later that kind of relates to the other thing, but then 3 other things have happened in the meantime, It's very, very difficult to tell these stories in a linear way.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I'm also a little bit nervous talking about it, so I'm trying to get over that, but
well, it's fine. Like I said, I literally talk to people about this, several times a week, so I've heard a lot of these stories and experienced a lot of this, kind of stuff myself, so it's definitely a safe space in Strange Familiars for weird stuff.
Well, I really do appreciate that platform. It does. It's cool. It honestly feels good. It's kind of therapeutic. Good. I'll be honest. Yeah, I don't know. Also, listening to your show, there's been a lot of things that have triggered, where I'm like, yeah, whoa, oh my gosh. So there's this, I'll kind of jump away from the really cool man that saved us from the snowstorm.
Okay, yeah, we can jump around. It's no
problem. I kind of feel like jumping around a little because it is kind of naturally doing that where I'm like, and then there was this other thing. So I'm going to kind of like maybe trigger some things for you because it triggered things for me listening to your show. So my family, my dad's side of the family has this one room, very old stone wood cabin that is grandfathered into the national park, Roosevelt National Park. It's been there for a long time, and it's in the national park. So there's some other cabins around, but it's a very interesting forest and a very interesting place. And I spent a lot of my childhood there, and at one point basically lived there. So my dad, when he was a child, he saw a Bigfoot in the window.
Oh, really?
In the cabin, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I told him he should tell this story, but he's a little shy. So whatever, I won't totally relay the whole story, but I'll kind of relay a bit of it. But
sure,
he was like, I think 10 years old, got up at night to go to the bathroom, and there's a window. It's from the outside, this thing would have had to be 9 feet tall.
Mm.
So on the inside of the cabin, this window sits pretty high up on the wall. And supposedly he was walking and he looked over because he felt something, and he sees this thing looking in at him, just staring at him. So that really affected him. It's definitely in his psyche. There was something more than just seeing an animal. That's what he said. It was like the intention and just how intense it was.
Wow.
Was like, it still affects him, honestly, and he's definitely a grown man.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is interesting because at that same cabin when we were little kids, we would play games out in the forest, and me and my siblings, we would take branches and we would knock on the trees patterns, and we would hear patterns get knocked back.
Huh.
And it wasn't always instant. It would be like sometimes even like you forgot that you had even done it, and then all of a sudden there it is. So we were always kind of like doing stuff like that and not really knowing what that was.
Yeah.
And like I really go back there. It's actually kind of one of my sanctuaries. There's just something really nice about it because it's just out there, no running water, no electricity. You go up there to watch like meteor showers and stuff. The sky's always there's no light pollution.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. But then there's like around the cabin, like me personally, even feeling like it's my sanctuary, I do not go out there at night. I really try not to go outside of the cabin at night. I feel such a sense of something watching me.
Oh, wow.
It's really kind of strong. So, if I have to go out and go to the bathroom, I do that and I go back in. I don't like hang out really, unless someone else is there with me. And like, I lived there for like, by myself, probably a month at a time. So, that's, that's a good amount of time to like get used to a new environment.
Sure.
But I always feel it. So, that's one thing. And there are definitely wild animals all the time. And supposedly there's no grizzly bears in Colorado, but one of the neighbors saw a grizzly bear. So if there's something going to be living in the area, that would be the place.
Yeah.
And there's no cities the nearest city would be like Estes Park, which is like, I think like 40 miles away or something, close to. But later on in life, I was like a teenager, and I had brought some friends to a spot that is about a mile away from the cabin. It's it's in a valley. We call it the Singing Springs. And that's because a lot of the places you can sit there, you can actually like hear music. It can be different for different people, but for me, it's really like you sit there and you might hear like just like melodies, just like the way the water flows. It just creates these melodies, and sometimes it actually sounds like instrumental music. So it's kind of got that nickname. But we were out there camping. There's like multiple campsites. So we were in the farthest one, and it's my favorite because there's like a really cool bridge someone built over to it, and it's kind of like on an island. So we were over there, but to get firewood and stuff, you have to cross the little bridge, and then there's like a good spot to store firewood. So I was there one night, and I was being the one getting firewood. I kind of like to be the fire troll, as they call it. So I would go and I collect the firewood, and then I tend to the fire, and then I make sure that the fire's out. That's kind of like the job title. But when I crossed over the bridge, I was hearing something like cross over next to me. I just was like, oh my gosh, what is that? And then I started picking up sticks, and I literally was hearing panting, like a dog panting, directly next to me. And I kept being like, what the? And like looking around and like grabbing my bundle of sticks, and then like quickly running back over the bridge and like putting it on the fire. And then I'm sitting there, and right behind me, I hear the panting again. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, do you guys hear that? And they'd be like, no, I don't hear anything. So this was happening to me the whole night. This dog panting and feeling like something was following me, but me not seeing it. Probably like 4 hours of this, of just kind of like intermittent. The next day, we're hiking around, and two of the friends I was with pointed up the mountain and were like, whoa, did you see that dog? Like, did you see that dog up there? They, I guess, saw a black dog pass right across the little clearing and just like disappear into the trees. So they saw it, and the night before there was something that was a dog next to me, and I thought that was also a little bit strange. Because you guys also mentioned black dog stuff.
Oh yeah, we get a lot of black dog stuff, and the panting is actually something I heard one night. Something unseen, like approaching me and my friend. It's on one of the very early episodes. I forget which episode number it was, but I actually caught it on tape. You could hear this, whatever it was, breathing or panting, coming closer to us, and we couldn't see a thing.
Yeah, it was a really weird thing. And it's also kind of strange because I've always had a dog in my life. But that was like one little intermittent part of my life where I didn't have a dog.
Huh.
So the black dog thing, I guess like I didn't see the black dog. I just heard the panting and it crossed. Like at one point I heard something cross in the stream. Like, I'm not really very, like, jumpy as far as, like, wild animals. Honestly, I'm kind of going through a life transition right now. But, like, from age 17 to 25, I spent, like, 6 years just straight hitchhiking.
Oh, wow.
And just traveling around. So, like, I did a lot of camping by myself. And a lot of just being... I was stalked by a mountain lion for a number of days, and like none of those things really affected me the way that some of these paranormal things or some of these things have affected me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just a different thing. It's more of like I don't know. It just kind of lingers a little bit more than that. I guess another kind of, story, I guess, that I could talk about is it's not really about seeing things or seeing, like beings or whatever. It's kind of more about this concept that has been mentioned a few times, synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that I never was exposed to. No one ever talked to me about this. I kind of almost like even came up with that term. I don't even know where that term came from, but I kind of came up with it on my own at some point. But it was the way that I would explain my travels and like hitchhiking. Because, when I talk to people, especially if I was hitchhiking or if I was like in that state of travel, people would be like, oh, what are you doing? There's like these normal questions that they ask you.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly feel like I was very much like guided a lot of times, and I was guided through my own personal synchronicities. But things that would really like almost keep me safe, I guess. Like there was a couple close calls even that if I wasn't paying attention, I could have ended up getting killed or something. Like there were some moments where if I didn't take a left turn instead of a right turn, I would have just gone straight into a really bad situation. So I had mentioned this reoccurring thing for me. It's actually a number. It's 333. I don't know what it is about that number exactly. It started becoming a thing, later teenage years, where I would really recognize it in the world around me. I wake up, I go through periods of time where I wake up at like 3:30 or 3:33, like
Right.
almost every night.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure what that is, but there would be this, thing, let's say I'm hitchhiking, a car pulls over to pick me up. I'm walking up to the to the car, and their license plate says 333. I'm like, okay, I just accept that ride. I just get in. You know what I mean? And then I'm like, okay, cool. I'll just, go with that. And then sometimes, because you'll be waiting somewhere for like a week. And you're so anxious to get the frick out of where you are. It's uncomfortable. And it's, you could maybe lose your head a little bit because you just want to go somewhere. Somebody could pull you over and be a complete freak. Or be very, you get a bad vibe. And just like accepting that and being like, no, sorry, we're not going to the right spot or something.
Mm-hmm.
But like, there were a couple songs that would show up on the radio even, or just like these things that would almost speak to me as like, kind of like a guiding force, I guess, like an external guiding force. Yeah, this happened for like years, honestly. Okay, I guess I'll just like kind of give a little bit of an example.
Yeah, give a couple examples.
Okay, so I came back to Colorado for maybe like 2 months. I stayed at my dad's house, which is kind of a weird spot for me, of course. It's kind of uncomfortable, but I started doing the thing where I wake up at 3:33 in the morning. And this isn't always. This just happens like maybe every couple years. So I then decided to leave because I was getting kind of uncomfortable at my dad's house, and also it was starting to be winter and I like to migrate before winter hits. So I basically get a ride to Denver, and then I catch a ride with these guys that were like truck drivers that were just going on a road trip together down to Tucson, and they were cool and all. I'm traveling with them. They're like, we're fine. And I fell asleep in the car. And I woke up at some point and we're like in Arizona. So from Denver to Arizona. And then right when I wake up and I look out the window, the next like off ramp is 333. So I'm like, hey guys, can you pull over? That's my spot. Like, stop here. And they're like, are you sure? Like, it's kind of like 12 o'clock at night. And I'm like, yeah, no, I gotta go. So they pull over and they just let me off. And at this point, like, I actually don't know where I am at all. I just know that I'm in Arizona. So they pull over and I get my stuff out of the back and I hike over to this off-ramp sign and then I throw my backpack behind it and I make a little camp. And, you know, I have a dog with me this whole time. My dog is like, he's been with me on all these adventures, basically. So in the morning when I wake up, I realize that I'm like really close to Sedona, Arizona. I don't know if you know that place.
I know of it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting spot. So I'm like near Sedona, Arizona, and I catch a ride. Literally the car that I catch a ride with, this is the license plate thing. Its license plate was 333. The first car that picks me up. So I'm just like, okay, I get in the car. They take me to Sedona. I get out. They drop me off at this like art gallery or something. And there's this sculpture of this angel. It's kind of a crazy sculpture. Like she's got like transmutation staff, like with the snakes. And it's like, it's a pretty trippy sculpture. If you ever go there, it's pretty easy to find, but it just had a lot of symbology on it that kind of speaks to me, honestly, that I either draw or things that I just appreciate, like a comforting thing, and it's kind of a hard thing to explain, like I'm really struggling to explain it, but it just kind of is this reoccurring thing that to me just identifies that I'm kind of like on the right path.
Right.
And I'm not really sure what that is.
No, I get it. It's like these synchronicity storms, usually either something really cool or something really bad's going to happen when they happen. And, I will say that, putting yourself where you're constantly traveling like that, where you're hitchhiking around, I mean, that's intentionally liminal space. So you've intentionally put yourself in this kind of consistently liminal zone, which is, at least in my opinion, that kind of opens you up to even more of that.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a big difference from when I'm in motion like that and when I'm stationary. I find that when I'm in motion like that, for me, it's way more of these symbolic experiences, synchronistic experiences, like different kind of cool or bizarre human connections, and there's like almost like it seems like there's like a web or a design to it to some degree. But when I'm stationary, it's almost like something catches up to me. That's when I have like weird experiences that are like on a different level. Like I was saying, like previously, before when I had decided to leave my dad's house in the first place, I started having like weird experiences in that house again. So it's not that I'm like trying to run away. It's not really the intention, but it does kind of feel like when I stop moving, it kind of changes. And it kind of turns into something else. And I can't really identify what that is or why that is. On all the years that I spent like traveling and hitchhiking, I did have some kind of weird experiences for sure. I had mentioned a hot springs, these hot springs in Idaho that I was at.
Yeah, I wanted to get into that.
I don't know if you want me to.
Yeah. I was actually just looking at your list, and that was going to be my next question.
Okay, yeah, because that was when I was hitchhiking. So, I actually went to the Rainbow Gathering of like 2012 up there in Montana. It was honestly cool but bizarre. It wasn't I went to one in Pennsylvania way long ago, and that was awesome. But Montana, that was great. But really the point was that I had gone up there for this rainbow gathering, but afterwards I ended up at these hot springs. And there's one called Bob Weir Hot Springs and another called Jerry Johnson Hot Springs. I kind of am confused about which the name was on the one I was at, but basically you don't cross a bridge. You just hike up into, the country there, which is honestly beautiful. That area, Idaho, awesome. So I found myself at these hot springs, which is kind of like an intermission spot for a lot of people. So although I was there camping by myself, there was a lot of people there and leaving, and I made lots of good connections and stuff. And I was there for, I would say, 2 weeks. So I had a little camp down below the hot spring, down the walkway at least. So I was pretty familiar with this area. One night, no one else was there. I had gone up to the hot spring like I usually do at night. And so the scene is that there's these, basically the spring is coming out of like up high on this cliff, and people have made this very nice pool. It's kind of, people have crafted it a little bit. It's big enough for probably like 6 people to sit in comfortably, but it's like up on a hill, and then the water cascades down the hill, and there's a river down below it. Or I would call it more of like a nice stream, not quite river. So I was there at these hot springs soaking, and my dog was cutely nestled over in the bushes near it. And the sun was starting to go down. And I was actually to the point where I was like, okay, I've had my fill. I'm going to get up and, get going. And just all of a sudden, just bam, right down by the river. I thought it was like a flash of a camera. Honestly, the first one, I was like, what the? Because there was this really bright light just flashed down there. And I had kind of like, did the thing where I like pretend that my eyes are somehow like a telescope to like, as if I could see closer to see if there was like a person, but there's no people. And then when I was looking down there, another one happened. So it was like these orbs. So they would build up in size, like gradually, like each one took probably about a second to do what it was doing. So it would start as a pinpoint, and it would build up in size and get probably the size of maybe a soccer ball. Flash a light, really bright, and then be gone. So these things were happening down by the river, like probably one every 2 minutes, close to. So I was just watching this show. I was like, I had no clue. I kind of expected that it was like ball of lightning is kind of what I was thinking. But then they started happening in the trees, like directly on the branches and like higher up, not at the river anymore. So they gradually started going higher and higher up. And then at one point they were like eye level with me, because I'm probably like 40 feet higher than the river is. So these things are happening eye level. At this point, it's like really late. It's probably like 2 a.m. And I was actually like really overdue getting out of the water. I was like, okay, I'm super pruny. I have got to get out of the water. And I stood up to get out of the water, and instantly I just got this. It was like almost just like, I felt like if I would have stepped out of that hot spring, that I would have been hit by lightning or something. All of the hairs on my neck stood up. I got super uncomfortable. Honestly, I felt very uncomfortable. And I just sank right back down into the water. And at this point, too, like, my dog had not even come over to me. Usually he's like, oh, way too long, let's go. But he was staying put. He wouldn't move. And I even kind of called him to make sure he was okay. And he just kind of cried. He just made a little cry noise and stayed right where he was, kind of nestled under this bush. So when I was in the water, I didn't feel anything negative. And it's not like the feeling I had before was necessarily malevolent or negative. It was just like electrical. Like I was in the middle of like an electrical storm or something. So I watched these spheres all night, literally. And the whole time they kept happening, they would happen higher and higher in the trees. And then right when there's like a little break of daylight coming over, they were actually like in the sky, but they weren't as often. They weren't like every 2 minutes. It was like maybe once every 5 minutes. But as the sun came up, that's when they started making noise. So this whole time they were completely silent. But as the sun actually started coming up, it would be like cracks, like electrical cracks. And then when the sun actually came up, within like seconds, this heavy, dark thunderstorm formed. I literally watched this thing and just started like downpouring raining. Just like right as the sun came up, it just turned into a real storm. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'm definitely getting out of this water. Mm-hmm. And so I had just like stayed up and seen this evolution, and it was kind of this weird feeling like these things had somehow called in the water, because at that point that area was really, really dry, and it was like, I would call it definitely high fire danger or something.
Right.
And this storm just drenched everything. It was like really needed for that area. So I had kind of contributed that to like just the land asking for the water. So I went back to camp and then I fell asleep for that day. And the next day actually this day that this happened, it was that same day when I woke up, there was a couple that had shown up at the hot spring. I was kind of on the path playing my flute, and these people walked up and they're like, hey, were you here in this area last night? And I was like, yeah, I stayed here all night. And they were like, yeah, well, we were camped like literally right down the way, and we saw some crazy lights over here in the sky above this area. Like, did you see anything? So that was interesting that these people actually like directly asked me about seeing something weird.
Now, is this related to you said there were 3 hermaphrodites with different color eyes, or is that a separate story?
So no, these 3 people could be real people. Like, I don't want to offend anyone out there if they're listening and they're one of these people and they're like, oh yeah, I remember you.
No, yeah, I get it.
It's very possible, but regardless, it's kind of a bizarrety because this is the next day. This is the next day that these people showed up. So they showed up on bicycles, and I was up at the hot spring. I was taking a morning bath and just kind of getting my day going, and these people showed up. But yeah, they were 3 people that were perfect hermaphrodites. So they were both gendered. You couldn't tell. They weren't like dominantly ending gender. And each one of them had a blue eye and a brown eye.
Same eye on each one of them?
No, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. Wow. And I think one of them had like a blue speck in one of their brown eyes. Mm-hmm. Wow. So this is the weird thing though, is because like at the time I was like, oh wow, that's really cool, guys. Like, you guys are so cool. I'm glad you met. You're great friends. Like, whatever. I didn't really think much of it. Mm-hmm. And they actually ended up camping with me. So we had like a little camp. So we hung out for like probably 3 days, I would say. We'd cook and have lunch and dinner together. We had like rice and beans and like super simple. They had their bicycles, But right at this time, I can't remember their names. And I also can't really remember what distinguished them from each other. So, like, in my mind, I really try to, like, I'm pretty good with faces. You know, honestly, like, I don't remember names, but I do remember faces. But, like, when I imagine them and try to, like, imagine their individual faces, I just can't. I just see the same person, really.
That's interesting. Did they seem like they were, like, triplets or twins or siblings even? Or were different people, just happened to have the same kind of look?
Yeah, they all had very similar people. Pale blonde hair. I wouldn't call it dirty blonde. I would call it pretty light blonde. Very fair skin. Same height. Same, like, being a hermaphrodite truly as a human being is also incredibly rare.
Yes, it is.
You know, it's like, I don't even know the statistics, but it is rare. All three of them were from birth hermaphroditic.
So
that's
this
just
isn't
how they were born.
Okay,
and then all three of them.
Wow. So it's not a visual judgment.
These people were
you
born
made.
that way.
Yeah, they literally were hermaphrodites.
No.
Wow.
They were hermaphrodites. I mean, I don't want to get too personal, but
Sure.
like, we were in hot springs together, and it's like clothing. So, like, they were definitely hermaphrodites, and we talked about it. They even brought it up how strange it was that they met. Like, it wasn't like I think these people look kind of like that.
Right.
It was like they were.
Wow.
You know, like from birth, supposedly, and they had all met recently. And they were riding bikes. Like, what? Like, to get to where this hot spring is like from one direction 100 miles, from the other direction like 80 miles.
Yeah, that's
so like
definitely...
it's not like just down the street.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting experience, and it came on the heels of seeing the lights.
Yeah, it was the day later that they showed up.
That's very interesting. Yeah,
the day
I mean,
later.
I feel the same
and
as
then,
you. I don't want to offend anybody by saying that there's something weird or something other. I mean, but it's definitely a strange occurrence, especially on the heels of seeing those lights.
Yeah. So just like, okay, for whatever that's worth. Also, I mean, I even kind of looked into the rarity of somebody having a blue eye and a brown eye, and that itself is so, like, honestly, the likelihood of these people is like the impossibility, actually, more so, is more possible than the possibility of them.
Right. Yeah, there comes a point where you're just like, something weird is going on here, whether it's naturally weird or having to do with the other. Something weird is going on here.
Yeah, it's a point to recognize, though, and it was a point in my life that was really a strange one for me. I was going through a strange phase at that point. I really was. I had been through some crazy, recent, kind of partially traumatic experiences, and I was just kind of trying to, like, find a place to, like, rest. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes when you're traveling in that way, like, I put myself in it. I chose to do it. I wasn't doing it because I'm, like, homeless. That's not my intention.
Right.
I literally am doing it because, I kind of love adventure. It's part of it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And also, like, I was at an age and am at an age where it's just, I mean, why not, I guess? Like, I'm not going to college. I learned so much. Like, those years, I learned so much about myself and just the way I feel about the world. But all of it was definitely intentional. But there was some highs and some lows, for sure.
I can imagine.
It was dramatic for me. And, so it's just an interesting kind of a point for me. And then also I was there for kind of a long time, I think. And it was really cool that I got to spend that much time with them, but it's still weird that I can't identify or separate. And maybe it's just because of the fact that they were, like, hermaphroditic. You can't really get a gender. There's these things that we kind of, like, naturally classify people in our memory. Mm-hmm. Like ways to remember people, ways to, and they broke all of those rules.
Right.
And the way they left, too, was really kind of a little interesting. I wouldn't say it wasn't like they got in a spaceship and flew away, but they did just leave at night. Like I woke up one morning and they were gone. So we had a meal together, and then we're all hanging out, kind of shooting the shit. Went up to the hot spring, came back down. We're getting ready to go to bed. And then I feel so bad I can't remember their names because I really would like to. One of them came over and was like, "It was really nice to meet you, Jenna," and like smiled, and then went back to bed. And I kind of thought that was a little weird and out of place almost. I was like, "What do you mean?"
Right.
Like, we're just going to bed. And then the next morning I woke up and they were gone. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I just kind of I was like, okay, they just got up and continued their bike trip.
Right. Well, Jenna, I want to thank you for sharing your stories with us tonight.
Yes. And for whatever it's worth, I have more material if you ever want to hear it.
Yeah, I definitely want to start doing follow-ups with other guests. In fact, that listeners often ask for it.
I really appreciate your time.
Sure. Thank you. Well, you have a good night.
Thank you.
This is the last show of 2020.
It better be.
You're not gonna.
I'm not doing another
quickly
one.
do another one and edit it, both of them in time for the new year.
No.
This is it. This is the last show of 2020.
This is it.
Oh, well, thank God for 2020. What a great year it's been.
The next new episode of Strange Familiars will be in the new year.
Yeah. It's a shame because, the 2020 thing, it's graphically, it's so nice to have a nice...
It is. It's going to be hard to make glasses out of 2021.
It is. Conveniently, no one will need to wear them, so...
That's true. I want to thank Stephen B. for his PayPal donation. Thank you so much. That's a huge help. Thank you so much. Nice way to end the year.
It's a PH Stephen and not a V Stephen. There's a difference.
If you'd like to help us with a PayPal donation, you can find a paypal.me link in the show notes under any episode. You can click on that and make a one-time donation. There's also subscriptions, though, like Patreon. Maybe we'll start the YouTube channel subscription sometime soon. That's one of my goals. But for now, there's Patreon, patreon.com/strangefamiliars. All of our patrons get full extra episodes of Strange Familiars. We released one last week. We're well into the 60s now, 60-some extra episodes. As soon as you sign up, you get all 60-some of those. I don't remember the exact number. 60 plus of those, and then we add more every month. Always at least one. Sometimes we do more than one. You can check that out, patreon.com/strangefamiliars. And I want to thank all of our patrons, every single one of you. Thank you so much. We could not do the show without you. You guys make Strange Familiars happen. Everyone can help by sharing the show on social media, by liking and subscribing wherever you're listening. If it's on a podcatcher, like and subscribe there. If it's on YouTube, like and subscribe there. And leave us those nice 5-star reviews, because those reviews help get the podcast in front of new potential listeners. So our photo of the week is a real photo postcard from the 1900s. I don't know, sometime before 1920, we're thinking.
Yeah, probably the teens, I think.
And it's two women. And the one on the right seems to be wearing a Guy Fawkes mask.
Yeah, that has an accidental V kind of look to her.
Yeah, I don't know if that was intentional. I doubt it, because it
I
came
think
from the
they were
US.
just, a lot of times, girlfriends or groups of young kids would go to get their photos taken and then switch hats or dress up in each other's clothes just for
right.
a humorous photo that they take.
But I mean, that mask she's wearing,
It does.
It looks like Guy Fawkes. With the hat and the long coat, she really could be V for Vendetta.
And her friend is wearing male clothing, and then she still has her lace-up boots, which is really cool.
Yeah. And she's got a nice twirl to her mustache there. I'm assuming it's not hers.
Then I'm thinking about how gross it would be to have a studio prop mustache that people reused.
Oh, in the time of COVID, that just,
I know, it just seems like it didn't weather real well.
So I picked this up just because I like the, as you called it, the accidental V. It really does look like it's trying to be V for Vendetta. And you know what? It's a time traveler.
There we go.
From
there you go.
Anonymous.
If we want to sell this on Etsy, it either has to be haunted,
right?
Time traveler. Mm-hmm. It's definitely curated.
It's a neat photo. Check it out. I'll have a image of this in the show notes. You can click on that. It should take you right to our Etsy shop, where you can buy this and other photos of the week and other photos in general, as Allison has started adding more photos there. There's a photo of the week section, and there's like an antique photography section, I think. And Allison has started adding several to that. So check out the collection there. Also on Etsy, artwork by me. My books are there. It's the only place other than Riverbend Comics that you can get Apparitions, my art book. Pre-order for Where the Footprints End Volume 2. Check it out. Etsy shop name is Lost Grave, but if you look up Strange Familiars, our stuff should pop up. While you're on Etsy, don't forget to check out our friends Karmic Garden. It's Etsy shop name, Karmic Garden, one word. They have soaps, scented sanitizers, natural cleaners, candles, beard balm, and more, including the bespoke Strange Familiar scent, which I'm told is quite the hit. They have a Flannel Man fragrance they made as well. So check them out. And I believe that's all we have for tonight.
That's all we have for 2020.
Oh, look at you. Thanks for listening, everybody. We will be back in 2021 with another episode of Strange Familiars.
See you on the other side.
Which is really just next week.
Yeah, it's just an arbitrary...
I don't want anybody to think we're like taking a break or something.
No, you never take a break. There's always an episode. Even on the weeks that you take off, you're like, well, I should at least make a new patron episode.
Strange Familiars is a production of
Dark Holler Arts LLC.
Music, books, podcasts, and more. darkhollerarts.com. Intro and background music is by
Stonebreath.
stonebreath.bandcamp.com for more. We're on Facebook.
I always want to say the radio. I can't get through my head that
This is a podcast. It comes through the computer box.
to me it's still the radio.
We're on Facebook, facebook.com/strangefamiliars, where you can join the Strange Familiars Gathering group. And we are on Instagram @strangefamiliars.
return. And the wingless rise like birds. The winged cross themselves in turn. And the wind becomes the word.